Are you good? Are we recording? Yes, we are.
There we go.
Good evening, everyone. I am welcoming you to a special fire committee meeting today on Monday, September 14th. So I'd like to call roll call first. Commissioner Hayden is not present. Commissioner Hogan has been excused. Commissioner Kuziani may try and phone in. I know he was somewhere hoping that he would be able to access the Zoom meeting. Commissioner Bacone?
Here.
Commissioner Jones?
Yeah.
And Commissioner Santoro. Press the space bar. You're still muted.
Try a space bar.
Okay, now you're,
It's your Mac here.
okay, thank you. So we have a quorum. Okay, there are 4 out of the 7, so we have a quorum. I would like to now take a moment of silence, please, and pledge allegiance.
Okay.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Amen.
Thank you. Any general announcements from anyone? Okay. Just give me 1 second, please. Any communications, Chief, anything?
Not at this time. I'll have it ready for you next week.
Okay. All right. So new business. This is for discussion, consideration, and possible vote to approve fire committee number 2020-08 to authorize the chief to accept the AFG grant emergency funding. No, I'm sorry, the AFG grant funding for $205,617 and district matching 10%, $506, sorry, 70 cents. This will cover hose and nozzle replacement, new nozzles, and associated hardware and equipment, as well as training for safety offers, and as set forth in the award letter. Sorry, this copy of my agenda is not really very good. Okay, here we go. Training for fire safety officer and fire officer 1.
I make a motion to approve.
Motion to approve by Commissioner Santoro. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Bacone. Discussion. Chief, do you want to explain just what this grant is going to do for us quickly?
Sure. Yeah. So one of the issues that I wanted to address, and with the assistance of the grant committee, was to standardize our response throughout the fire district, having the 4 previous fire districts. Everybody had different hose equipment, nozzles, appliances. No one truck was standard. They were all pretty close, as we did work together for many years, but they just, I couldn't take a station 4 firefighter and put him at station, or her at station 1, and get the same equipment, same nozzle setup. So by standardizing the equipment, it will allow us to deploy quickly, effectively, and with the latest water supply and fire attack hardware. Quite a few of our nozzles and appliances is what we connect any of the hoses to, the hydrants to the trucks. We're getting old and they were wearing, so it's quite costly. And in order to accomplish the standardization, we felt a grant would be best suited. So that's the intent of the equipment portion of the grant, and essentially will save the taxpayers in the district for many years with this federal assistance. Another item to look at is professional development. We send firefighters every year to become fire officers, safety officers, and also fire instructors. And that's the national standard through the NFPA. The Rhode Island Fire Academy does put out great programs, and these standards will be met through the Rhode Island Fire Academy. Some of our in-house instructors, we have instructor coordinators that they'll be delivering this. We're hoping for a satellite location of the Cumberland Public Safety Complex. So again, this is a way to bring professional development to maybe make it easier for the firefighters in Cumberland to attend a class in Cumberland, bringing our standards up on all levels. In this program, in this presentation, we have covered the cost of the class as well as any backfill overtime expenditures that we would need. So again, a tremendous savings to the taxpayers, to making our fire department that much more efficient. So the grant committee researched everyone's files, everyone's training records, and determined how many safety officers we had, how many fire officers and fire instructors. And that was the determining factor as to how many we would request. So out of the 52, we were looking for 11 fire officers, we were looking for 21 safety officers, and we were looking for 18 fire instructors. So we do have a very educated department, but this would close the gap, and this would bring this to set the standards and a little higher. So that is the brief description. If you have any questions about the grant, as far as I should have mentioned about the equipment. We looked at all 5 of our fire engines. So we have 3 engines that are frontline that we use to protect and staff, but we also have 2 engines that we keep to the in-service level, and that's for if there was a truck breakdown, or if there is a fire, and we can use our callback system and get those 2 engines into service quickly by the off-duty members. So this will not only take care of what we typically do is our frontline pieces. This is going to take care of all 5 of our engines and bringing up to speed. So that is the hopefully brief, but a little bit too far, but I was excited to present that.
Thank you very much. And I think we all had the same question. How are we funding our matching obligation?
Sure. So Steve and I have met. We've looked through our historic records, or we've looked through the last 3 budgets, and we saw how we spent our money last year with some of the new savings that we've been looking for as far as so one of our line items is equipment purchasing and upgrading. Obviously, the nozzles and equipment does fall into that budget. We will use funds from that line item. Last year, we used really just a nominal. We didn't touch that line item too much. So we plan on using a great deal of funding out of the equipment purchasing and upgrading, because that actually is what we're doing. We were going to pull out of drills and training. We have academy training that we've planned on sending members to the academy, as well as the professional development section. We feel we are more than covered by touching all these categories. And if Steve wants to back up our meeting, I'll certainly give the floor over.
Thank you, Nick. No, yes, we did have that meeting and we did discuss it, and those were the items that we touched upon. And we also said that if we find that there may not be enough items as we go through the year in those lines, that we will look at other line items to transfer the money to this, so we would not go over our budget.
Okay. Does anyone else have any? Oh, thank you.
No, I just said, since we're still early on in the budget, that's the plan for right now, but we will reassess it as we go through. If we have to adjust that, we will.
Okay. Anybody have any further questions?
Madam Chair,
Go ahead, Commissioner Jones.
Steve,
Yeah.
the breakdown, equipment and upgrades, purchases and upgrades of equipment. Right now, do you have an assigned amount of that 21,000 to those 3 categories, drills and training and professional development? I realize we can move things later, but just so that it applies to the right area, do you have figures for us now?
Well, talking with Nick, out of the equipment purchase and upgrading, we foresee about $10,000, which would be the match for the equipment side. And for the training, we projected about half of under the drills and training, about 8,000. And under the academy training, Nick informed me that there's one that we will not have to fill this year. So there's 3,700 right there. And that brings us over for the match for the training grant as well.
Good.
Not touching the professional development?
No, if we need to, we can, yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
I want the record to state that Commissioner Kuziani is present.
Present.
Okay. Any further questions?
Madam Chair, if I could,
Commissioner, yes.
I don't know whether this question, I got in about 5 minutes late, and I apologize. This grant, I assume, had been worked on. I mean, looks like a lot of work has gone into this, running the numbers. I assume this was something in this that you've been working on for what, the past 2, 3, 4, what period of time are we talking about?
So the grant committee was formed in August of 2019. So that kind of gives you a bit of a timeline. There was many meetings amongst the committee members throughout the fall and early winter. when we were informed of the grant award, that's when Steve and I immediately that we called a meeting of the grant committee. Kerry Smith and Deputy Chief McCabe. We talked about how we would, obviously this meeting is the first step in it. We have to accept the award, but then we talked about how we would administer the grant. So we've stayed pretty busy throughout the last year. There was a tremendous amount of research done by the grant committee members.
Well, I have no doubt about that, Chief. That's not specifically what I'm asking. On this specific grant award, I mean, you have to educate me for a minute. It looks like there's something that's been in the process. I'm sure that you didn't put these numbers together in the last 1 or 2 weeks, but you had to work on them, I assume. Would that be fair?
Yes, sir. Yes. So,
Okay.
yeah, we were, the budgetary process, we were aware that these grants were out there, and we obviously wanted to make sure that we had enough in the budget to accept these awards.
When you say these grants are out there, again, I'm not aware of the grant process. So I don't want to delay the process.
Yes.
I mean, did they say that there was some monies available for I mean, how do you get to understand that this grant is available to Cumberland? When do you make that process and work on it?
Oh, okay. I apologize. Yes. So the timeline for the submittal of the grant was in March of this year. All right. So when this after the awards of 2019 are given out throughout the next couple of weeks, then the FEMA assistance to firefighter grant will close, and then you immediately start thinking about next year. So when due to COVID and everything else, as this year the grant process was a little slower. We had a meeting last November, but it was typically it's typically a January through March where you really do your research, crunch numbers, and determine the needs to make the best possible grant. The submittal was in March of 2020.
And again, I mean, this grant or these, I hate to use these analogies because I don't think it's a correct terminology, but these monies become available, grants become available, and you decide whether you can apply for these grants. Would that be the appropriate term that I should be using?
Yeah. So that these two items were, we determined the need, but we also wanted to be realistic in our keeping in mind our financial condition. We obviously we didn't want to put in for $1 million fire engine, and then our 10% match would be there. So we obviously we wanted to keep it realistic as far as the our financial status, and essentially how we could utilize kind of a smaller grant, and this was certainly one of those, kind of keeping it realistic. They do award more grants of these sizes than they do fire apparatus, and I understand that we need bigger purchases, but this was something that needed to fill an operational hole that we had.
This grant committee that you're referring to, do we have anybody on that board besides you and Steve, or is it?
No, so yeah,
Who else makes up this grant committee?
Sure. So there are.
This was going on for a long time, Phil.
No, it's fine. So yeah, so there's 10 firefighters. And the professional development side was handled by Captain Eric De Rosario. He handled all the training that we mentioned, and the equipment side was handled by was headed by firefighter Greg Jones. So they delegate their work out amongst their committee members and compile the data, write the best possible narrative. It's then reviewed by myself, Steve, and then Kerry Smith is the actual she reviews it, and then she'll submit it using a program called FEMA Go. And once that grant is submitted to the federal level, it is checked by a series of computers. Once it makes it by that process, it goes into a peer review session, which was handled remotely this year, but typically.
Chief, not to interrupt, but I understand. I'm just trying to the basic question so I can understand this process. I mean, I personally have looked at these and looked at these numbers. I know what the 10% of 88,600 is, and I can see it in the equipment that we have $20,000 allocated for it. Last year we did 4,500, so we have room just in the equipment. And now the personnel, you say the overtime on this grant was computed within that $122,000. Did I hear that correctly?
You did hear that correctly. We will not drive up our overtime. We are strictly talking about our 10% match.
Okay.
Our overtime will not be affected due to this training.
Okay, that's what I need to hear, because I know there was a lot of work that was put into this, and again, I'm not downplaying it. I wish we had gotten a little more advance notice of this, not in great detail, but at least some advance notice that this was being applied for. Doesn't mean we're going to get it, but to be aware that it was in the process of being worked on. Again, I'm not sitting here with a calculator, and I can't do it. I have to rely upon the people who are preparing this information, that they come up with the appropriate numbers, and I respect their work and accept their work. But it still would have been nice to know a little bit in advance.
Oh, I do apologize. I did look throughout.
Phil, we did.
Oh, sorry.
Phil, with all due respect, Phil,
Yeah.
we were notified many months by the chief that he had formed a grant committee. The chief, when he took over, had formed many committees that the former chief was doing by himself. So the new chief formed many committees, one of which was a grant committee to save our taxpayers money. And this grant committee has been meeting regularly to work with the AFG to reach out, to get grants. And this has come to fruition now. And now our taxpayers are going to realize $200,000 in savings. And this has been ongoing for many, many months. So it's not something we found out 4 days ago.
Paul, I think you misinterpret my statement. I'm not being critical of that whatsoever. What I'm asking about is if this was being worked on at an earlier stage, a brief note being sent out, we're looking at a grant for equipment or personnel, something of that nature in advance. It might be minimal in your respect, but to me, it makes a great deal of difference in regards to my looking at documents to plan accordingly. So I'm not being critical about the fact that these grant committees were there and had been mentioned. I remember them being mentioned, but I had no major or even detail about it. And that's what I would have liked to have seen.
Yeah. So
Any difference, Paul?
I understand that, and I do, yeah, I do respect that point. So like the commissioner said, I did inform at the early part of the year, but I think the lesson learned would be once the grant is formulated, I will for certainly for next year, I will give that rundown in the March timeframe. I do understand what you're saying. Yeah.
Minor notice, as I said, I'm just going to repeat myself. I don't need all this 3 months ago or
Right.
2 months ago, but just some basic general idea.
Understood, and I will.
No criticism. I'm just expressing an opinion.
Yeah. No, it's a valid one. I appreciate that. Thank you.
So maybe next year you could send us all just a copy of the narrative.
Correct. Yes. Perfect.
Okay.
Madam
Any
Chair,
further? Commissioner Jones.
Chief, just going back to sort of a history, when we had the budget hearings, I agree with you, that's my parrot. Anybody want a parrot?
No, thanks.
No.
I think.
No.
Back in the budget hearings, we should sort of be in the loop on
Knocked you out?
process
Not far away.
also. I know it's gonna be smoothed out.
You make me.
For instance, if we're looking for a capital of engine purchase, for $1 million, that we could consider it at the budget level to put a contingency in there for if we did get that grant to match our 10% or whatever, what the program calls for, so that, in the future on the grant applications, even if we had a delegate from the fire commission, preferably probably from finance, well, not necessarily so, or the chairperson, to just be in the loop so that we can build this in to future budgets. So we'll all come back to, we'll be asking you for a forecast like we do every year after the election, to a plan going forward. But thank you, thank your committee. Looks like get the apparatus up to par.
Thank you.
Dana, is that parrot named Dana Jr.? Because it just keeps on talking.
It's Tennille. Tennille.
Okay.
I apologize for that bad joke.
Any further discussion?
Can I move the motion, please?
Well, we had to finish our
Deadline.
discussion, Paul, first.
Well,
so-
when was the deadline to accept this? Is there a deadline?
Yes, there is a deadline, and we are approaching that deadline, and that was the intent. It is towards the end of this week. It couldn't wait for the monthly meeting.
That's all I need to hear. Thank you.
which is why we needed this emergency meeting, so. Okay, any further discussion? Hearing none, let's go to a vote. All those in favor of approving requisite number,
Resolution.
thank you, resolution 2020-08 to authorize the chief to accept the AFG grant. The grant is for a total of $226,178.70 and $20,561.70. The first grant will cover nozzle and hose replacement and associated hardware, and the second grant will cover safety officer and fire officer 1 training. All those in favor, raise your hand, please. The motion carries 5-0. Congratulations, that was a good grant to acquire.
Thank you, Chief. And the other people who worked on it.
I was going to say, and the rest of the committee, congratulations. All right, I know we have one member of the public. Would the member of the public like to say anything? Any public input? Okay, is there a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn by Commissioner Santoro. Is there a second?
Commissioner Kutsiani, the second.
Second by Commissioner Kusiani. Any discussion? Hearing none, let's go to a vote. All in favor of adjourning, say, raise your hand, please, so I can count. 5, passes 5-0.
They're not voting? That's
I'm
fine.
sorry?
I'm sorry. Take it back. Forget
Thank
about
you.
it.
Yep, we're on that. 5-0. Thank you very much, everyone. This meeting is adjourned.
Thanks, everyone.